27, the Anti-Bilingual Education Initiative.
This is not an English-only initiative. This is not an English-first initiative. This is English for the children.
Polls show voters will pass the initiative this June. So what does this mean for California's children?
The message is very clear to parents, to teachers, to kids that a foreign language is not healthy.
Today, teachers, administrators, and parents discuss what the future holds for our children, all today on Vista LA.
Hello and welcome to Vista LA. I'm Henry Alfaro.
And I'm Laura Diaz. Today on Vista LA, we will examine the issues surrounding bilingual education and Proposition 227, the initiative that would eliminate bilingual education as it is now practiced in California's public schools.
A controversial initiative indeed that will be on this June ballot, and certainly not an easy one to understand.
Yes, Henry, and it seems like every other day there's a release of another study to prove an opposing side's argument.
But hopefully today, Laura, we will be able to shed some light on this subject. First of all, let's take a look at the initiative and what it really means. It was the boycott of 9th Street Elementary School in Los Angeles over 2 years ago that inspired the Anti-Bilingual Education Initiative in the state of California. Immigrant parents were concerned about their children being taught in Spanish, so they held their kids out of class for 2 weeks, forcing the school to start teaching classes in English.
What our parents understand is that English is the language of access.
This is where former Republican gubernatorial candidate Ron Unz got the idea for Proposition 227. Proposition that would end bilingual education programs in California.
This is not an English-only initiative. This is not an English-first initiative. This is English for the children.
The English for the Children initiative will be on the June ballot. The initiative requires that all children be placed in English language classrooms. Children who are English learners should be placed in sheltered English immersion classes during a temporary transition period not to exceed 1 year. All local schools will place in the same classroom English learners of different ages, but whose degree of English proficiency is about the same. It also includes putting together those students from different native language groups who have the same degree of English fluency. All polls indicate that the initiative will pass. In fact, a recent survey last March showed 70% of the state's voters do support it. While support for the initiative has been mounting, individual school districts are moving to end bilingual instruction. Bilingual teachers say the English for Children campaign is capitalizing on discontent within the public school system and making bilingual education the scapegoat.
Every version of bilingual education has an English language development component. Every single model. Otherwise, it's not a bilingual program.
In March, the State Board of Education decided it had no authority to order local districts to teach children in their primary language. This decision, according to Professor Magaly Lavadenz, makes the future for children even more uncertain.
We're still very unsure in terms of what are the legal implications of that. We also have several school districts and school boards who have decided to apply for these so-called waivers.
Magaly says what concerns bilingual teachers is that the transition for these limited English proficient students into English classes will not be an easy one and may in the end discourage them to learn English altogether.
My fear is for children who are yanked out of supportive, nurturing environments where they can relate and they can understand the content to a classroom where they are confused, where they are not supported, where they feel lost. And when that will happen, it will be disastrous for those students going through this type of program, which is an experiment. It's a costly experiment at the stake of our children, and that's my greatest fear.
Now today we have with us to discuss Proposition 227, Los Angeles Board of Education member Vicki Castro and Alice Callaghan, founder and director of Las Familias del Pueblo, a community center that works closely with students from 9th Street Elementary School. Ladies, welcome to Vista LA.
Thank you.
Vicki, let's start out with you. You've been a proponent of bilingual education. It's been around the district for many, many years. Is it working, and why?
I believe that we've come a long way to making it work. When I first became a teacher, anyone who spoke Spanish became a bilingual teacher without methodology training. So I think we've gone through some major revisions in the district. In fact, we wrote the whole plan in 1997. So I think we have moved the notch up considerably, and I would say now it is functionally a lot to still improve. And it almost is on a school-by-school basis, but there are many success stories.
Alice, I know that you don't share that opinion, that you think it is not working. In fact, you've been supporting some of the Latino parents who've been opposed to bilingual education. What exactly do you base that assessment on?
You know, bilingual education, and we have to understand we mean many things by that. So in Los Angeles, what we're really talking about is native language instruction, where a child is taught only to read and write in their native language for 4 to 7, and now they're recommending 10 years. So it's not bilingualism in the way many people think about it. In fact, our parents at the center often said if it were bilingual education, they would have supported it. Everybody supports bilingualism. The problem is our children were only learning to read and write in Spanish. And like most children, our immigrant children were living in Spanish-speaking homes, playing in Spanish-speaking neighborhoods, watching Spanish-speaking television, and then going to school and studying in Spanish-speaking classrooms. And not surprisingly, they were not transitioning later in life to English. And it's interesting, almost the only immigrant group in California that has what we call native language, transitional bilingual education, are the Latinos. And yet it's the Latinos that have the highest dropout rate at almost 40%. They consistently score the lowest on tests, and they have the fewest numbers of people, students admitted to university. So the one group that is the beneficiary or the victim, however one sees that, of bilingual education in California actually does more poorly than every other immigrant group who does not receive bilingual education.
And I would differ on the statistics. First of all, in California, especially in Los Angeles, we are the largest group, so we have many diverse needs. But in Los Angeles, it is not only the Spanish-speaking children that have bilingual programs. We have a very large Armenian population and Korean population, and we do provide bilingual education settings for them. I think some of the, and I take fault with the district on many issues there because they have not held some standard. When I was a principal, I had 10 elementary schools feed into my junior high school. And the one to the east would have an excellent bilingual program and exited, and I'd have great students. To the north, I'd have a school that did very little. So there was inconsistency in the implementation and the monitoring. I think we have come there's been many improvements. And I support the superintendent's call that says that within 3 years, students should be ready to start exiting. We know there's going to be a few kids that come in with extra educational needs that we hope by the 5th year we could exit. So to say that, you know, from 4 to 10 years, you know, there has been improvement and there has been change in the program. And I'm glad that you qualify. You know, when we say bilingual education, it is not one type of class, one kind of method. We take children where we do a needs assessment on their language ability in their native tongue when they come. Some come from schools from countries that are highly educated and literate, and then we have many children in our district that have never even been afforded the opportunity to attend school, and they're 13, 14, 15. So we're talking about illiterate, and we have to address all their needs.
But Vicki, the argument is that here we live in a country, English is the language. Why should we change everything else? Because I know that I didn't speak any English until I started school, and all of a sudden you learn it, and all children can get immersed pretty quickly.
And I think there's a big difference, though, because I didn't speak English when I entered either, and I had a language problem until college. And so there's many things, but there was no real program that addressed. And if we had supportive families and we had the right environment, somehow we made it. But many of my colleagues did not make it, and my biggest fear now is not that they, you know, won't make it through the seat of their pants, those that have the supportive environments. My fear is that when you're not making it and you don't have the support system, that we'll go back to a system that says you are retarded, you're mentally retarded, and the bilingual program that I came out of put kids in retarded classes and special needs.
Vicki, if I could interrupt for 1 second, we're going to go out on that strong point because we'll be right back with more on Proposition 227 and the future of bilingual education. When we come back, we'll review what reactions parents have had in other parts of Southern California. Please stay with us.
We're here this morning to announce the filing of a lawsuit that's intended to give parents a choice in the education of their children.
That was the reaction from some parents that filed a lawsuit last year against the Orange Unified School District when they decided to eliminate bilingual education. Since then, bilingual education has been phased out of that district. Recently, parents in Santa Barbara had a similar reaction to their school board when it decided to eliminate bilingual ed by the fall of this year. In response to a decision by the Santa Barbara School Board to eliminate bilingual education by the fall of this year, several hundred Latino families last January called a 3-day strike boycotting schools.
It was a 5-0 vote. Very discouraging. No one on that board having the courage to stand up and say, maybe we underestimated the parents, their response, and that's exactly what has happened here.
For 3 days, parents organized an alternative school, sending a clear message to their school board and community at large that there is strong support for the bilingual education program.
This district is saying, you do not have a choice. This is the way it's going to be, and it's going to be applied across the board, okay? And so that's one of the areas that we really need to emphasize over and over: parental choice, parental empowerment. And with respect to this UNS initiative that is facing the voters in June, we're looking at that as an infringement on the powers or the responsibilities of local districts.
But board members insist that this group is just a minority and that the majority of parents in Santa Barbara want to see more English used in their children's curriculum.
I think that the action of the board is opposed primarily by bilingual teachers and a few educators at UCSB. I believe that most of the parents in our district support the action of the board.
Santa Barbara board member Alan Ebenstein says bilingual programs are not working because students are not making the transition to English.
Another measure that we looked at was the percentage of students who are being redesignated from LEP, Limited English Proficient, to FEP, Fluent English Proficient. And prior to this past year, less than 2% of the 2,800 students in our district who were designated LEP were redesignated FEP, which basically means that almost no students were learning English in our bilingual program.
Ruben of the recently formed Santa Barbara Parents Coalition says the English immersion classroom doesn't work either. He was a product of it and still carries the scars of attending school before bilingual programs existed.
I brought a language that I spoke with an accent early on. The message to young kids is that what you bring to the classroom is negative. It's a negative. It's holding you down. That has tremendous impacts on kids' self-concept, self-worth, their own self-esteem. It's not just about eliminating the language. It's affecting the kids' self-esteem. And so by eliminating these programs, you're saying what you're bringing to the classroom is not good. You know, leave it out, put it out.
Joining us on the bilingual education discussion this segment is Henry Gradillas with Yes on 227. He's been involved in education for the last 30 years. Also with us is Principal Mara Bonimarito of Woodlawn Elementary School in Bell. Woodlawn Elementary School has 1,400 students, of which 1,000 are limited in English. The school is 98% Latino. And we'd like to start with you, Mara. Do you think that bilingual education is working? And if so, can you make a case for it?
I know that it's working. At my school, we have a very successful program, and I have the hard data to show anyone that is interested. It is a program at my school that works. There are only 5% of parents at my school that opt out of the program. There is choice for parents. And
so why is it working?
It is working because, first of all, we have qualified teachers who are highly trained. It is working because the goal of bilingual education is academic proficiency in English, not just conversational English. Those are two very different things. Beginning at kindergarten, and by the way, 65% of all LEP students are in kindergarten. And so when the children come to school, we begin immediately with English, what we call sheltered English, making them understand, giving them what we call comprehensible input, and so on through the grades. The children begin to read English at about the 3rd grade level. Many of the children begin earlier than that.
When do you wean them out of that program, though?
We just graduated last night, 94 children who are 4th grade students and 5th grade students. They are no longer limited English proficient children. Redesignation means one of the criteria is that they have taken a standardized test in English and scored at the 36th percentile. I want to let you know that at my school, the children who are in the bilingual program are scoring higher on the English test than two other groups. One, the group whose parents chose not to put them in the bilingual program, and two, the children who are native English speakers. By 5th grade, the children in the bilingual program are scoring higher. Furthermore, this continues throughout middle school in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and I have the data to show that.
There's actually even longitudinal study within the district that shows that that's more of a pattern than there is failure. Those that come from quality bilingual program will outscore English speakers, native English speakers, and many times on standardized tests.
Although it's interesting, there was actually a study just released by the school board very recently, of which they looked at 7,200 children, 1,400,000 children, who were unusual children in that they went to the same school from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. So we're talking about a very unusual group of children. Out of those 14,000 students, 7,200 of them were limited English proficient students. Of the 7,200, and these are children in 5th grade, 3,000 of the children in the bilingual program could not be tested in 5th grade in English because they were still not sufficiently proficient in English.
Henry?
See, what I found is far too often these kids that are learning subject matter content in Spanish continue to learn it without ever really shifting into the English version of this, to the point that many are actually held back academically. And when they get to junior high or middle school, when they're tested, obviously they don't do as well as they should. So they're being put into remedial programs, they're being given basic maths, so that for the 3 or 4 years they're in junior high, they just don't progress at the level they should.
You know, Henry, that has changed a lot.
Well,
that has absolutely changed
But the biggest problem I see is when you get them to high school, the counselors there again will test, and if they find that these kids do not have sufficient skills in English, they are forever banned from taking the algebra and geometry that is so quickly and important to be able to take on the physics and the chemistry. So you end up with a very small percentage going on to universities. And unless they really learn the English well enough... And if you go back
to the graduating seniors of kids, such as Garfa, where you were principal, and Roosevelt and other schools, and you look at those that are going to the major universities, those that are the valedictorians of their class, they're out of bilingual programs. And I'm very proud of them because their language was not stripped from them. They're proficient bilingual in both languages, and they are the prize of the community.
We don't want to strip their bilingual heritage or their bilingual language. We want them to keep their Spanish, and that's why we have the AP classes and the classes in Spanish. That's not the problem. Far too many of these students don't learn sufficient English to be able to master the classes in English. Let me give you an example. When I taught, I was brought over by Dr. Avalis back in '72, and later again I became principal 10 years later. But kids would come in with bilingual biology, and the universities would not accept that as a laboratory practical work, so the students that knew it in Spanish had to take another course again in English to be able to master it sufficiently well enough to move on.
Henry, I know you're passionate about this, but I have to cut in for one second. We're going to take a short break, but don't go away. We're going to continue our discussion on bilingual education and Prop 227.
Gradual. It'll be easier on the children if it's gradual, because then they'll have some time easing into the new language, getting used to the new language, both hearing it from us as well as the new materials coming in English, versus a sudden switch over and the shock.
Welcome back to Vista LA as we continue our discussion on amount of time is appropriate to be in bilingual ed.
Well, if they really mean bilingual ed and the kids come here already well-versed in their native language, let's say in Spanish, then to be truly bilingual, classes should be taught in English and subject matter material must be in English. And I feel that when kids come in, particularly if they've been educated in their country to the level that they come in here, it's easy for 1 year
for
them to move
You're
to
talking
that
about
particular.
high school, not elementary
I'm
school,
talking
where
about,
most of the left students are in elementary. I think that I have
also we agree a literate child in their language
level
can move out of a program in two years,
1 year
3 years.
Sufficient.
You know, I mean, to master English too
Why
is what we're
waste
talking.
time?
No
When
one's
I
wasting time.
When I taught
but you know what? The majority of the children coming here are not that literate child that you're talking about.
But you have quite a few.
We have quite a few, and we're addressing their needs.
Five-year-old children,
but we're talking about the majority
with no background in literacy.
But why teach them math in Spanish? Math is international. 4 and 4 are 8. Cuatro y cuatro.
No, it's not
And if
just
they learn this-
computation. We're talking about
But
application
you know,
of
the UNS
mathematics.
initiative does
That
not...
involves language.
Listen, they not only learn the subject
UNS
matter
initiative
content,
does
they
not
also
even
learn the
address
English.
content area, and it doesn't even care if they take a class in
I want to
content
talk about
areas.
the classroom
So
that
they
will
talk
be
about
created
English
at the
only, and
elementary
it's almost
school.
a year of stopping any growth in math and science and social studies.
No,
if the UNS initiative is passed, it talks about total immersion in English for 1 year,
And you will have a
do not
classroom with a first
worry
grader,
about
second
their
grader,
math,
third
do
grader,
not
fourth grader,
worry
and
about
a
their
fifth
social
grader.
studies.
What does that
It
do
will
for
hold,
academic
it's
learning?
1 year of
If a child
remedial.
can't understand the language, how can you teach them?
Let's talk about how that works. We actually have first graders and kindergartners in our center, and they're all in English language classes. They don't even have the benefit of what the initiative is proposing, which is an intensive language class. You have to understand, no other country on the face of the earth does what we do here, which is first teach a child to read and write
And
their
this
native
is like
language.
no other nation on the face of the earth
Because
that
it
has
doesn't
a
work.
responsibility
Okay.
to educate every child in
But
its public
the
education.
important issue that
There
we
are
have not
there are
touched
countries
is
in this
choice.
world that you know that it's
This
a
is about
elitist
local choice.
educational system, and I don't think we are in that category.
Very opposing views. We run out of time. Stay with us. We'll be right back.